this video, we're going to take a look at how to use Adobe XD. Now, this is in no way an in-depth introduction to the program, but it should get you started on your journey with creating content here. And what we're going to do is we're going to make a very simple app prototype today. So what we're going to do is start up here, and we have the option for iPhone, web, Instagram story, or custom size. For the demo today, we're just going to go with iPhone. You can also hit these drop downs and get different options. So for example, if you wanted to make it for a pixel, you could do that, but we're just going to stick with the iPhone for this demo. It's going to come up with the correct size for the image. And we're going to get started with a little simple page that you can be kind of like a launch page for your app. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to File, and I'm going to go to Import. So these are just photos that I got from Adobe Stock, and I'm going to find one that I like and use that for this demo. I'll use this photo here and select Import. When this imports, it comes in very large, but that's okay. We can always rescale this photo. So I can move the photo around until I can grab the corner. I could also zoom out on this, but I'm just gonna scale it by grabbing the corner. I'm holding down the Shift key when I scale this, and what that does is it constrains proportions so my image doesn't get stretched out. Now, this is quite a large image made for print, and that's why it's taking so long to scale. But it's always better to start with an image that's too big and scale it down than start with an image that's too small and scale it up. When you take an image that is too small and scale it up, it's very easy to lose quality in your image. Now I'm going to go with this about right here. And this doesn't fill up the entire space, but that's okay. I'm going to put a little navigation bar up here at the top and leave that as it is for now. So the next thing that I want to do is come over here to my shape tool. I'm going to go to rectangle, and I'm just going to draw a rectangle navigation bar. It doesn't matter both with this photo and our navigation bar. If it goes over the edges, it's not going to show that. I'm going to turn this border off over here on the side panel, and I can change the fill color, and I'm going to make this more of a UTSA style blue. Now, if I were doing this for real, I would get the hex code for UTSA blue and put that in, but for sake of demo, I'm just going to find something pretty close. And then what I want to do next is I'm going to add another rectangle over this. I'm going to make a little tag here. And I'll show you something kind of neat we can do with this. If I go up here to my arrow tool, you might notice these little circles. If I grab these circles, I can bend the corners. So if I want this to have more of a curved look, I can do that and then adjust the position of that so it has a nice kind of tag to it. And what I'm going to do in this tag is drop in a logo. So I'm going to go back up here to File, same as we did with the photo, Import, and I'm going to go to my graphics folder, and I have a logo for the Honors College in here that I'm going to use today. Select that, Import, and it's way too big. This time I want to show you we can also zoom out. I'm using Control minus or Command minus if you're on a Mac. Same thing, I'm going to grab that corner, I'm going to hold that Shift key down. Remember, holding that Shift key down constrains proportions. I want to zoom back in, Control plus or Command plus if you're on the Mac. Easy way to zoom in and out. So you can grab the corner and you can scale and you can move things around, or you can simply do that. And here we can see that that logo fits in that tag there. I might make that tag just a little bit more narrow and a little bit smaller. Again, I could be very nitpicky about this, but for sake of demo, I'm going to keep it pretty simple. I'm not going to try to get super crazy about getting everything just right in here. So definitely something that I could get crazy about. The next thing I want to do is go ahead and add in a hamburger menu. Now, you might not know that term, but those are just those 3-bar menus that you see on a lot of apps. So I'm going to go to my rectangle here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to create 3 bars. And a lot of people would just go in and make a rectangle, 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 but I'm going to show you an easier way. I'm going to make 1 rectangle. I'm going to turn off that border because I don't like it. I'm going to zoom in. I can also zoom in with this little magnifying glass here and select the area I want to zoom in. So Control plus or minus, or you can use that little zoom tool. And I'm going to round those corners so it looks more like a menu. I'm going to shrink that down. Now this time, notice I'm not holding down Shift to constrain proportions because I want to be able to shrink this down to more like a menu bar size here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here to that right hand panel again and select Repeat Grid. And if I do that, I can pull down and get multiple repetitions of the same image. If I grab between those, I can tighten it up. So here you can see I've made a very easy hamburger menu. Very simple to do. Doesn't take a lot of work. You just use that repeat grid. And we'll take another look at that in a little bit. Just Control minus to zoom out. And then I'm going to fix up that position a little bit. Let's call that good enough for the sake of demo. All right, so now I have the start of my piece. And what I want to start doing now is building content. What I always like to do is build out content before I build out the prototype. So to do that, I just copy what I have already. I can click on this type up here where it says iPhone 14 Pro Max, hold down the Alt key and drag it over. And then notice right between that, it's showing me how much space. You can choose how much space you want between this. So it's 34, let's go with 50. So I have 50 pixels between this. And then I can start to build out the next section of my app. So I'm gonna delete this photo because I want this to be more text-based. Maybe it's about the Honors College. You know, I want a little app that tells about the Honors College. So I'm gonna go and import an image. So I'm gonna go to File, Import. I'm gonna go back to my stock photos. I'm gonna select another photo and import. Again, it's giant. I could grab it. I could zoom out. I'm going to zoom out this time. Hold down that Shift key till it's smaller. Drag it over. Put it into place. Zoom back in. Let's use the magnifying glass this time. You can work on whatever works for you, whatever method works for you. Now check this out. Remember that rounding trick with grabbing these little circles? We can do that to photos too. So if you want to give your photos a nice round look, you can do that as well. So I'm going to do that. And let's add in a little type. Now I'm going to go to the text tool, come in here, and maybe I'm going to type, let's say students. And I can select that type. Come over here to the side, I have my font options. All of our options come up right over here. So if I want to choose something different, I can choose that. I can use the up and down arrows. So if I wanted to make this larger, I'm just using the up arrow on my keyboard to make that larger. And then I can move that around. I can change that color. I can eyedrop that color. So if I wanted to bring back that blue from the top, I can just use that eyedrop tool and do that. And then I want to add in some filler type. Now this could be anything you want. It could be real type for your real project. But what I'm going to do is just use some filler type. And right now, notice that this is at a font size of 50. I don't want that. I want it to be much smaller. I'm going to make it 12 point. And then I'm going to get some filler type for this. When I'm mocking up an app, one of the sites that I like to use is lipsum.com. I can come down here and generate some paragraphs of lorem ipsum. So I'm just going to do that really quick. And then I'm going to copy 2 of those. I'm back in XD. I'm going to hit paste and just paste that in there so we can see roughly what that would look like. Now with this, I can go in just like before. I can change the font on it. I can also go into this font and just use the arrow key and go through too if I'm trying to find a specific look. And get that, and then maybe that fill right now is that blue still. I'm going to change it to black so it's a little easier to read. And this is not perfect, but we're going to call it again good enough for the sake of a demo. Now that I have that, everything goes pretty quickly. So I can come back over here. I can select that again. I can hold down the Alt key just like I did before. I want to give that 50. Check it out. It remembers that size, goes pink when it matches up. And then I can simply go in this image, right click, replace image, select a different photo, import, go in here, and I can say, let's say tutors. All right. And then I'm going to zoom out a little bit. I'm going to do the same thing. Click on this, hold down that Alt key, drag it over, get it to 50 pixels, click, right click, replace image, use this one right here. And then maybe I'm going to say clubs. And then let's do one more. Click on this up here, hold down that Alt key, drag it over 50, click, right click, and replace image. And then I'm going to put this one in, double click, and say faculty. All right, so now I have my app roughly built out, and I want to start to make it actually do something. So what I'm going to do next is I'm actually going to make my menu system. To do that, all I have to do, click on this same thing here, hold down Alt, drag it over. Boom, I have that. I'm going to zoom in using my magnifying glass in this one specific piece. And I'm going to delete out my content because I'm just doing this as a menu system. It doesn't need anything but that menu option up here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a little drop down that'll come up from that hamburger menu. Rectangle tool, same thing we used earlier. Click and drag. I'm going to eyedrop this to match my blue here. You don't have to do that, but I'm just going to match it up. And I'm going to use that rounded corners trick, but I'm going to do one little thing different. If I grab that corner and grab it and pull it, it rounds all the corners. Well, I don't want that. If I hold down the Alt key, I can round just one corner. So if I just want a little bit of that rounded, I can round that one corner and it looks really nice. I can still resize this, I can still change it. Maybe that menu is a little bit too long for the options we have here, but I can do that. Let's check out something else that's really neat using a trick we learned earlier. I'm going to go to the text tool, and actually I'm not even going to go to the text tool. I'm just going to take this faculty here, copy paste, Control C, Control V, Command C, Command V if you are on a Mac. I'm going to change that color to white. And the reason I just did a copy and paste is because I know that font is going to match up with the fonts in my pieces. Now, is this the best font for a menu? Probably not. But again, for sake of demo, it's going to work. All right, and we have faculty there. And what were our other options? We have faculties, clubs, tutors, and students. Okay, so I'm going to use that repeat grid trick we did before. Go up here, repeat grid, pull it down. I have 4 options, so I'm going to have 4 bits of type. And right now it just says faculty, 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 but that's okay. I can change that out. I'm just going to go to my type tool and double click in that, and I can say students. And that's a little bit too long, so I'm going to make that a little smaller. And notice when I did that, it made all of my type smaller. Isn't that awesome? I don't have to go through and resize everything else. Tutors. Double click. And then we're going to make this say clubs. Oh, I accidentally clicked off it. That's okay. If you ever do that, you can just click and then click back on again. This is a common thing that happens when you're working with these. All right. And then now we have that all in there. And I'm just going to bring this whole thing up and over a little bit. Again, probably not the best font if you are really doing this for really real, but for sake of demo, it works and should be okay. So what we're going to do now is we're going to actually start to make this work. So what I want to do is be able to click on these menu options and go to these different pages. Well, this whole time we've been sitting here in the design mode. And what I want to do is go to the prototype mode. And to do so, I just click on prototype, and that will take me into that mode. Now, what I want to have happen is when I click on that hamburger menu, for it to bring up this menu. So I can click and drag, it gives me a little arrow, and if I drag that over to this option here, it will pop it up. Now, with this, the trigger right now is tap. So if someone taps on that, it's going to open it. The type is transition. Now that's going to just change that screen, and that's not what we want it to do. We want it to actually overlay. And overlay means that that menu will overlay on top of these pages, okay? So that's what we want to be sure we're doing. And we're going to do that for all of these. So if you missed that the first time, don't worry. We're going to click on the hamburger menu, click the arrow, drag it over to here, make sure it's set to overlay. Do the same thing here, click on the hamburger, set to overlay. It should automatically do it, but I always like to check and make sure. Set to overlay. And one more time. All right, so now when I do that, we can know that that is going to bring up that overlay. So let's take a look really quick at what this looks like. I'm going to click on this first one here. I'm going to go up to this little play button. Whenever you want to preview, you can hit the little play button. And if I click on this, we can see that our menu comes up. And that's a good start. Right now, none of these links in the menu work. Well, let's do that next. So again, I can click on where it says students here, and notice it's trying to click on everything. So you might need to double click on that. Okay, so double click, drag it over, and it's still on overlay. We don't want this to overlay over the top of our menu, so we want this to go to transition, okay? So that way it automatically transitions in that. Now I'm gonna go to tutors, click on that, drag it over, make sure it's set to transition, clubs, drag it over, faculty, drag it over. All right, so now let's click on that first page again and hit play. And so if I click on that, I can go to students, tutors, clubs, faculty. Let's say you want to have it where it can go back to that little home screen, that little landing screen. Well, you could do that with a simple click of your icon up here. That's always a handy way to do it. You could add that into your menu as well, but I'm just going to do it with this icon leading back to the front. And I'm going to do that for all these little icons. That way we can always click and get back home. It's always good to think about your user, what they're going to do, what they're going to see. If it's something that would frustrate you when you're using it, you probably want to think about that too. All right, let's add one more thing. And to do this, I'm going to go back to the design mode. And what I want to do is add like an app tour. So if someone needs help getting started with this, it will add a little tour. So I'm going to start off by going back to my front page here. I'm going to add a little graphic. Do the same thing I did before. I'm going to round those corners and make it look more like a button. I'm going to turn off the border. I'm going to fill it with the blue from the top. And I'm actually going to use that font that I use for students here for it. So I'm just going to do Control-C, Control-V, Command-C, Command-V if you're on a Mac. I'm going to make that a fill of white. Drag that down into here. And I'm going to say tour. All right, and I'm going to fit that to fit in that button, and I might make that button a little bit smaller since it feels a little bit too large right now. All right, so as I'm going through this tour, all I'm going to do is I'm going to take all these pages I made, I'm going to hold down the Shift key to grab them all. I'm going to use that same trick we did before with the Alt and drag it down. All right, so this is going to be my tour. Now on this tour, what I would do is I would add something about each of these pages, and maybe I would just do it in like a little pop-up box. Now I'm not going to go through and do all that. I'm just going to put a little simple mock-up here for a pop-up box. I'm going to use the blue and then add some rounded corners. And then I could mock up that type, or again, I could just put something in here for a placeholder for right now. And that's just all I'm going to do for right now. So I'm just going to put placeholder type in that. And I'm going to copy that placeholder onto each of these. So again, Control-C, Control-V, or Command-C, Command-V if you're on a Mac. And I can keep pasting these over and over again. So pretty handy trick to do. All right, so let's imagine that that's my tour and that type says something about each of those pages. And what I'm going to do now, I'm going to click back over to Prototype. I'm going to click on my button here. My button is going to lead to this page. And all the times we've been doing on tap. So when someone taps it, it will go to that page. But with a tour, maybe we want it to be a situation where it takes users from page to page. Well, what we can do is instead of clicking on an object, we can click on the page itself and then drag it over to the next page. And the trigger, instead of a tap, could be time. And then we can choose how much time that user's on the page, thinking about how long they need to read, what they need to see. You could also say tap to continue if you want it to be tap, but I just wanted to show you can do a time delay as well. And I'm just going to do this for 2 seconds so our demo doesn't go on too long. Click this, drag it over, sticks to 2 seconds, click this, drag it over, 6 to 2 seconds. I'm going to click this and then drag it back to the starting page again. So when it finishes up, it goes back to the beginning. So now let's click on this and go to play. And if I go to tour, we can see that it's automatically going to go through the tour of our pages here and give the user an overview of things. So really easy trick to use there. All right, so we're reaching the end and we want to do a couple of things. First up, I want to go to File and I want to come in here and save. We always want to make sure that we are saving this and making sure that we have copies of it. Now, by default, this is set up to save into the cloud. We can also save it as a local document. If you don't want to save it into the cloud, you can select to save as a local document so you have it on your machine as well. Now, one of the things I always tell people with Adobe is you typically save twice, once for yourself and once to show other people. These saves in here are for you to edit. If you want to share this with other people, what we're going to do is come up here to Share next to Prototype. And then we can come over here and give it a title. And we're going to call this Demo. We can set the view settings to design review, to development, presentation, user testing, or custom. We're just going to stick to design review. Anyone who has the link, or we can have only invited people, or we can even put a password on this if we're doing this for a company. I'm just going to say anyone with a link. I'm going to create this link. It'll take a moment to process. And then after it processes, we'll be able to click on that link and go to it and view our app on the internet. If I go back to XD, you'll notice over here that there is an option to update that link. When you save your file, if you make edits to it, if you make changes to it, just like you would save that edited changed file on your computer or in the cloud, you will need to update this link. So, for example, you make this project for a client, they recommend changes. You make the changes. If you do not hit update link, they will not see those changes. I hope this helps, and that's all for now. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out.